stuck, just let me know. I'll help you out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. Good evening and welcome to Fremantle Sailing Club's 2023 celebration of World Oceans Day. Here at the club we have a Marine Environment Committee that is very pleased to host events such as this to raise awareness for the club and our members in terms of the opportunities we have towards sustainability. This year we, for the second time in recent history, we ran the Exmouth Race and Rally. Some of us spent a little bit more time than others in the Shark Bay region, and it was absolutely wonderful to get the synergy to have the opportunity to introduce to you guys this evening as our special guests Dr. Brett Maloney, who is from CSIRO and the Indian Ocean Research Centre. Did I miss any letters there? Sorry, Brett. And Michael Weir, who is Mulgana,
Yeah.
and from the Shark Bay region, and together they are involved in a very, very exciting project up in the Shark Bay region under the title of Tidal Moon, and it's a combination of industry development and research. And at this point it's probably best that I just ask everyone to reflect that Fremantle Sailing Club being built on reclaimed land is within the area of WA that is the traditional Noongar lands, and we here you go, I told you I was going to get stuck. And we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, and we recognise elders past, present and emerging, and welcome you to this event.
Well done on the welcome to the country, or the acknowledgement of country. I'm going to hand over to Brett and let Brett do his introduction first, and then I'll introduce myself.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're meeting, the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'm going to take the option now I've got the microphone, is handing it straight back to Michael, because this is about you and Mulgana.
That's a cheap one. Good evening everyone, my name's Michael Weir and I'm from Shark Bay. I'm a Mulgana Yingara person. I'm here today to talk about Tidal Moon and a company that was formed in 2016. The concept around it was recreating history. So just being a very small and cozy audience, I like to engage a fair bit and talk to people on a personal basis, but can anyone tell me what the first commerce of Australia was? The first export?
I'm going to say sea cucumbers.
It's up there, the answer's up there, but it's the first trade that ever existed in Australian shores. Indigenous people used to trade with moccasins on certain trade winds and moons. They used to come down for a period of time and spend about 6 months here on our shores harvesting sea cucumbers. We used to actually exchange with them all sorts of things, from kangaroos to women to all sorts of stuff. But the main thing that the moccasins gave back to us in exchange for sea cucumbers, can anyone guess what that is? There's a bit of irony about it with Australian industry. Iron. We used to exchange sea cucumbers for iron, and we used to use that iron in our spears. So it went on for a very long time, and as a part of reintroducing culture in a modern time, I want to recreate history, post-colonisation, and get everyone involved. And we've been doing it since 2016, and ever since then it's constantly evolving. I've got a small presentation I'm going to go through, and I'm going to have a look at the video. And if there's anyone that wants to ask any questions while we're going, just put your hand up and feel free to yell it out. That would have helped you. It's got 2017 because that's when our company was incorporated. But it is actually a business that's designed with 3 language groups. So we have Mulgana, which is Shark Bay, Bioniu, which is Coral Bay, and Dullingi, which is Onslow. So the sea cucumber harvesting starts in Shark Bay and it goes all the way up to Onslow. It's about 3,500 kilometres of coastline that we actually harvest, and we have about 10 people that we employ. Anyone's thoughts on what that looks like? Has anyone seen a sea cucumber before? Has anyone tasted a sea cucumber?
Yes.
Ah! Did you like it? Yeah, I can't blame you. There's a curry fish. So they do get quite big, and they do play an important role on the seafloor as well. So if you ever see them, at least you can see what one of them may look like. As I said, I have trained over 12 Indigenous people in diving operations, and also cops and grade 2s, and a couple of MEDs. So a part of what we do at Tidal Moon is build human capital. We try to create jobs and opportunities in our local community to make sure that the next generation has income and actually stay in the middle class. There's one of our guys, his name's Tyrell. He did his first traineeship with us. He stayed around for about 12 months, but now he's working with the mine site up at BHP. Another guy, Shy, he's another one that's been trained up with us. He's got his dive ticket. Again, he leaped into a different industry, but he used the platform from Tidal Moon to gain encouragement and professionalism, and actually hold his head up high and try to find a good career path. He's laughing because we made a joke about what he's holding in his hand. That's Trent Quartermain. He's another one. He came from unemployment. He's never had a job in his whole life, but we gave him a chance to go through and actually be something and do something different and unique. I'm going to exit there, but if everyone can see the screen, I'd like to play a quick video about what we do. As I said, we are trying to recreate the first Australian commerce. We do have a factory up in Shark Bay that we do process our sea cucumbers. Half of it goes up to Singapore, or it's going to go up to Singapore because we have a trade deal with one of our clients. But our day-to-day operations, if you can all go around and see the TV screen and hear it, you can actually have a bit of a view on what we do on a daily basis.
Life goes on to the future of another day. Hey, all aboard, don't wait up for someone else to say. Say the same and remember the aim. What you going for? So open your mind and live your dream. This is your destiny. 'Cause the sun will rise, we're bringing another day. What you waiting for? Milina, Ragoya, Jalgiri, Niranina, Waroyo, Nara, Rogina, Lalili.
aren't they? Anyone got any questions about what you just saw down the back?
How long does it take a sea cucumber to grow?
It depends on the species. So,
My name is Shay Crow. I'm 24 and I'm Margaret.
sorry, that's the next video I'm going to show you. Yeah, it depends on the species. So there's the higher end species like the sandfish. It could take up to 14 months to about 16 months to get to a half store stage.
What's the job of the sea cucumber in the ecosystem?
They filter the water. So it's a good question. In 2011 actually, when the heat wave came through and destroyed a lot of the seagrass, a few scientists were here actually from UWA and Bomsey and Saro. They were there actually, they saw the impact it had from the hot water. But from an Indigenous point of view, we kind of looked at the whole ecosystem and we saw the loss of seagrass, but we saw the increase of sea cucumbers. So it's nature's trade-off to say, okay, if something's going down, something has to be going up to offset it. So the sea cucumbers, they started to get bigger, they started to get more prominent, they started to reproduce more, and we thought, okay, there's a significant role it plays with seagrass and sea cucumbers. So you can see how the whole ecosystem on the floor actually revolves around the both species.
Do they have a predator?
Man,
Apart from you guys?
nothing. Nothing touches them. They have no eyes, no fins, no feet, they can't swim, and they just lay on the bottom of the ocean and nothing touches them. Remarkable creatures.
Have you established a legal size yet?
We do cultural directed harvesting is what I call it. So we don't go into the zones where we know they're nurseries. So we use a lot of our traditional knowledge, and Mulgana people have been there for 25,000 years. A lot of that history's been passed down, and we harvest with the seed. We also harvest with the moon and tide. Obviously, the reason why I call it tidal moon. So there's only certain tides and moon where the sea cucumber come out from underneath the sea floor, and we can pick them up at that point. Yes?
You say you harvested Coral Bay and Onslow. How do you rotate? So do you do a season in Shark Bay and then Coral Bay and Onslow? Or?
We only got a little boat at the moment, so we only stick around Shark Bay.
Okay.
But we use Shark Bay as an incubator to train and develop human capital,
Yeah.
so that we can start to grow the guys from a open water dive ticket to an advanced dive ticket, and further, and establish our own industry. Any more questions? Yeah?
Do you think global warming will have an impact on the production of creatures and their overall survival?
So our goal is actually to take our operation offshore and bring it onshore and start an aquaculture facility for our sea cucumbers and breed them onshore rather than take the wild stock. We can see how important sea cucumbers are in the wild, and we don't want to keep harvesting, but we want to keep the strong genetic species and use that onshore so that we can actually don't breed out the wild stock, as you can just keep going with the sequencing onshore that can sustain an industry, because sea cucumbers are in high demand globally. We can understand that there's a market, but you also have to do it sustainably. The other thing that I can tell you right now is that we've noticed that the sea cucumbers has increased in size dramatically this year. So from our point of view, I'm not a scientist, but from our traditional knowledge, I can tell you there's going to be some hot water towards the end of the year. I could be wrong, but the signs are there. And that's just looking at nature. Observations in nature play a big role.
Can I ask, is the market Southeast Asia predominantly?
Yeah, and it's mainly the food market. But what we're doing with Tidal Moon, we're working with institutes like the Harry Perkins Institute for cancer research. We're developing some sort of pharmaceutical and beauty. Sea cucumbers is very high in collagen. So in 2018, we had sea cucumber capsules, but then COVID hit and kind of scrapped that for the time being. But we don't want to just go into the food market, we want to go into the health and beauty market and also the pharmaceutical as well.
So at this stage, are you self-regulating with numbers, or is fisheries involved?
Yes, we're self-regulating. So fisheries haven't granted us a minister's exemption, so we do harvest under that. But from a cultural point of view, we don't take what's not meant to be taken. And as you can see, we harvest everything by hand. We don't use no nets, no trawlers. Our human impact is very, very low. We don't disturb the sea floor. It's just collecting the ones that we know we can collect.
Is there any danger of other people harvesting them and getting it in on the act?
You can't stop other people from doing things. But there is dangers, always dangers, but we try to educate. Yeah, and look, we have a lot of visitors come to Shark Bay, and we do talk to them about what the important role of the sea cucumber is, and we also tell them how we're harvesting, and hope that they appreciate and respect it, so that they can leave them alone if they do see them, and let us manage them. But if not, you can't. Hello? You can't stop people from doing negative things. Yeah.
What's the best way to cook or prepare a sea cucumber? How would you prepare it?
I don't know how to actually cook it. I can only process them so it's ready for the market. But
What's the recipe?
no, maybe we can put some down here. Shark Bay sea cucumber and prawns. It's good and high in collagen. Makes you look youthful. One of the things that you may notice is there was a young guy that came into the scene. He went up and touched the manta ray and did a little dance afterwards. I just wanted to say that that's a big improvement on individuals' lives and what we're doing. That boy, he was born in a very, very harsh environment, and he was in a vicious circle of welfare, drugs, unemployment, the whole lot. But he took an opportunity to go under a training program and develop something with his life. So you can see the benefits of what an industry can actually bring to Indigenous people when we have a business, we operate a business, but we do it in a cultural sense. Any more questions on sea cucumbers? Besides how they look?
Best recipe?
Best recipe? Actually, I heard shark fin soup. You take the shark fin out and put sea cucumbers in, but you know, I guess that's why they're high in demand. And they're actually good for men as well. So you got it. I'm going to just show you one more video. As I said, the moral of what we do is redeveloping culture, re-establishing Australia's first export, but doing it with all people. We are an Indigenous company, but we do have people that surround us who are a part of it. As I said before, Dr. Brett Maloney. There's Nathan Gibbs here. He's done the magic of the media that you've just seen. Nathan, I won't tell people what you do, but he has produced a lot of TV shows that you have seen in the past, or in the present as well. We got another guy over here, Andrew Maiden. He's a part of the team as well. Feel free to say hello to them and pick their brains as well. I'll play the last one.
My name is Shay Crow. I'm 24 and I'm Margaret from Shark Bay.
Is this your first dive out in the ocean?
Yeah, my first dive with the scuba tanks on. Yeah,
How was it out there?
It was pretty fun. It's just different down there. It's amazing.
Who are you?
Marty Crow. I'm 20, just about to be 21 next few days. And my background in my mob is Noongar, Yamaji, Mogana and Manchu. So that's my 4 bloodlines.
What's the cool thing about diving in Shark Bay?
Oh, it's just the best ocean, the best weather, the water's lovely, the animals are lovely, it's just the coral is nice, the sea cucumbers now that we're getting is some weird creature, but it's one lovely creature. You just love seeing them, picking them up and putting them on the boat and going back down to look more.
What's weird about them?
They've got no brain, they're just guts. As a defense mechanism, they spit their guts out and regrow. It's crazy.
That's pretty amazing. Jeez. And what, have you ever eaten one? Do you think you'd have a taste?
Yeah, definitely. I'd have a taste. Yeah. Try them
Why
out.
do you want to become a diver?
Honestly, I've never seen much diving or Aboriginal people diving, and knowing that I'm an Aboriginal diver, I can't even imagine what the young kids are looking at and thinking, because I couldn't imagine it because I didn't see it. It's brought me back to country, brought me out of the towns, the cities, and yeah, to nature and learning my culture, myself, and my capabilities and who I really am, and also finding a new me. That's what I want to be at the moment as a diver and get my qualifications and yeah, be the best I can.
What do you know about sea cucumbers?
I know a fair bit, still a lot to learn about them, but I know they were the first trade, the first thing that my people ever traded for food or spice or rice or anything, and yeah, that knowledge, knowing that theirs is incredible. I didn't know that we even knew other people outside of Australia, so it just shows that there's a lot to be uncovered and there's so much about sea cucumbers and just how different they work to every other organism and animal.
My name's Ken Poland. I'm 25 years old. I'm part of the Mulgrave mob. I grew up in Shark Bay when I was a kid. Moved from there when I was about 6 and moved to Gerald. And then, yeah, lived there for the rest of my life, basically. And we heard about this opportunity from Marley and Alex. And decided it's time to come home, really. So it's good to be back home.
Yeah. The family keep asking when us boys are going to go back there because our family are from there and stuff. And cousin Alex just told us about this job opportunity and we went straight there. I feel like it will take me further than I could ever imagine. I've got the right people around me. So.
Is diving competitive? Can you be competitive with the other divers?
Yeah, you really can. There's been times when I've dived down and I've just taken it nice and slow and Marley or Alex will just come through and just scoop the cucumber or the black tea. We end up having a couple of little punch-ups under the water. Yeah, but it gets really competitive.
Do you sort of have violence on the water?
Competition of who can collect the most or the rarest species?
We have a competition now with the black tea. Marley at the moment is the king, we would say.
Are the black teas the primo cucumber?
They're the black cucumber. They look a bit different. They're different type of species. They have the teeth on the side. They have the teeth on the side. That's how we identify them.
Are they rarer and more valuable?
They're more valuable and more rare, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a couple of my crew members. Oh, go for it.
How many species then do you guys have up there?
There's 8 species that we can target in Shark Bay that we can use for market. But doing some stuff with the Harry Perkins Institute, they want to see all species and break down all the molecules to see if there's anything that can help humans with cancer, with other diseases, and see if they can match anything that can actually be of use.
I had another question.
Keep
So I
asking.
guess after seeing the interviews, I guess your people or your Aboriginal, do they not eat sea cucumber naturally? It just would go up to Asia?
We had a lot of food already that we ate. So it was people.
Much better.
Yeah, and more seasonal stuff. So the sea cucumbers, we didn't touch them too much, but we were introduced to them by foreigners. So it was a developed species that intrigued 2 different nations, Australian and Indonesian. So and you've got to think this is before colonisation. So it's quite unique for that to happen in this part of the world in some hemisphere.
What were the Australians? What were they doing? They started trading. What were they doing?
The Macassans, as far as I know, they were trading them off, setting off to China and other places where they were in demand.
For what though?
I'm not quite too sure. Yeah. They came down. They entwined themselves with various language groups, saltwater language groups along the coast of WA, the Kimberley mainland, not Shark Bay. We didn't have too much interaction with any of the Macassans as far as my people were concerned. I follow my mother's bloodline, which is Shark Bay, but my father's Northern Territory. So the Northern Territory had a lot of interaction with the Macassans and Queensland.
That's where I've read a lot about it as far as Northern Territory.
Yeah.
But even when we've been through Indonesia and we've been out with people diving for sea cucumbers up there, like in Wakatobi area, and they don't even eat it. They said they send it off to China. They send it to market to China.
As far as I know, with talking to certain people who sell it up into China, it's more of a status of your class on when you eat sea cucumber. It's more of a celebration. Sometimes they have it on a menu for weddings, and it's can be used for medicinal purposes. So something very intriguing was when the COVID pandemic started to happen, we see a spike in the price of sea cucumber go up straight away. And it was like, okay, they're looking for it for medicinal purposes. So there is a belief up there. Any more questions around sea cucumbers? Yeah.
You mentioned the heat event knocked a lot of the seagrass out. How important is that seagrass for the continuation of this industry?
That is a great question. I'm going to give this microphone to Dr. Brett Maloney right now.
Thanks, Michael. I'll come back in a long way to your question there. So I met Michael, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. We started talking about sea cucumbers and harvesting. I've got a fishery background, so we started talking, and Michael very humbly said, I just want to re-establish Australia's oldest export industry. I thought terrific. He then followed that up very quickly and provide real economic opportunities for Mulgana in Shark Bay. And I thought, okay, and to help people stay, young people, the next generation stay on country and on sea country to keep the culture alive. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty easy. As Michael said, we talked about wild harvesting. We know they're one of the most easily to overexploit species. Despite them being related to sea stars and sea urchins, for some reason you can really overexploit species. So the catches of wild harvest is quite small. We also know that, as Michael said, they filter feed. They go through the sediment, they clean up things, they eat off the bacteria that's either on the surface or in the sediment. Think of them as a giant earthworm that lives underwater. And so we started thinking about, well, what else could we do? And we very quickly came to aquaculture. Now, aquaculture is a big ideal. What makes it very special is that they don't need special food or diet. They just need some sediment to harvest through, so the inputs are very low. They also, as Michael said, they don't swim, they don't move much. They're quite an incredible creature. But you can actually go and, with the right permits, of course, if anyone's here from the government, go and what's called sea ranch, release them into Shark Bay. Now, conveniently, the Mulgana, after about 28 years, got settlement over sea country of Shark Bay. If you haven't been to Shark Bay and can't visualise it, think of something about the size of Tasmania. That's the sea country. So one of the things that we talked about was, well, what's the potential for that area? I can't remember off the top of my head how many square kilometres, but huge. So the other challenge was, as a dyed-in-the-wool Western scientist, I thought, well, the first thing you have to do is go up there in the field, get a team, drag people up there, and then I looked at Michael and he said, but we're already on the water with 25,000 years experience, and we're on the water 320-ish days a year. So I thought, this is great. This is just bringing people, supporting Michael, training up his divers, training up his eyes on the water, and actually really, really empowering people to go and survey the work. So we did a little bit of work in the background. We brought people from UWA, from AIMS, from WAMSI, who have I missed, other universities in together, and we had a chat, and there were people who were interested in seagrass, interested in sea cucumbers, interested in Shark Bay, and very quickly we started talking about the heatwave event. I told you I'd get there. Alright, so in 2010, 2011, there was a heatwave event. It was actually the most extreme heatwave event in the world. It centred on an area about the size of, not wanting to offend my East Coast colleagues, about New South Wales and Victoria combined in size. Started off around the northern end of Ningaloo, and for 3 consecutive summers, the water temperature was 2 to 3 degrees higher, up to 5 degrees, centred right on Shark Bay. So a lot of the seagrass had died. I think some estimates up to 75%. And there was research coming out of other places around the world that said where you find sea cucumbers, you find seagrass growing pretty quickly as well. So there's a link there somewhere, as Michael described. Some of it is that sea cucumbers are a bit like earthworms. They do a bit of gardening, they're good for things that grow there. So we thought, well, that's great. How do you restore seagrass? At the moment, you get highly qualified divers, put them in the water, and for between $20,000 and $40,000 a hectare, so 100 metres by 100 metres, you can restore seagrass. What we needed was 100,000 hectares of seagrass restored. Now, that was one challenge. How do we do this? Well, we've got teams in the water. Michael is madly training up other people to do it. The other part of it that we bought into it was the concept of carbon farming. There's a lot of people who are interested in carbon, pulling it out of the atmosphere, locking up in blue carbon sources like seagrass and mangroves. Now that's all great. There's a couple of little caveats there. First of all, the stuff you see above the sand is about 20 to 30% of the total carbon. It's all underground. It's rhizomes, a bit like your grass in your backyard. Now, while it's all healthy, that's great. But if you get heat waves and they die off, the risk is that the sediments can move around, expose the carbon and release the carbon back into the atmosphere. It's called, someone in Spain has classified these in seagrass areas as carbon bombs. You get a bald patch like in your lawn, you let the sediment or the storms expose the rhizomes, everything dies off and releases up. And it's been estimated that the amount of carbon that would be released in Shark Bay is about equivalent to 2 or 3 LNG trains worth of emissions. We're talking millions of tonnes of carbon released back in the atmosphere. So with Michael and a bunch of scientists, we thought, well, what happens if, just like tending a lawn, you could go to these balding and thinning patches and actually restore the seagrass? And how do cucumbers actually help do that? So there was an integral part here. We then had very clever economic people involved in a bank who said, there's actually people looking for mega-scale projects to invest in as offsets for their emissions. And negotiations are going on, but there's big companies that want hundreds of thousands of hectares of seagrass and they're willing to pay. Now, not only is that good for tidal moon, or Mulgana, the people of Australia, it's going to help us control our emissions as well. Seagrass is not only a great thing for capturing carbon, it's a great thing for stabilising coastlines, it's a great thing for juvenile prawns, juvenile fish and other things to live there. So we're actually looking at what the biodiversity value is of that as well. So potentially crediting carbon, potentially crediting biodiversity. There's also, and I hope I get this right, Michael, cultural credits. Things like turtles and dugongs and other species that are significant to Mulgana and to people of Onslow and North are also going to likely increase in number. So how do we get that as a package and to make a real opportunity for the Mulgana? So I'm not going to go too much more into that. Yeah, like this is, I'm really quite blessed to be working with Michael, and it's been I was going to say co-design, but it's been led by this man here, so yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Brett. His actual words, he thought I was nuts when I told him what I wanted to do. But yeah, the seagrass is very important. We did lose a fair bit, and there's a high risk that we could lose a lot more if there's another heat wave. So with the economics of the world today, talking about carbon credits, avoidance, decarbonising, the whole lot, I looked at it from a very simple community point of view. You need humans to fix human problems. You can talk about decarbonising, you can talk about carbon credits, but if you don't have human capital to do it, nothing gets done. you have all these corporations globally talking about decarbonising. You look at it, okay, if there's a building that someone wants to build, you need people to build it. It's the same thing in industry. I'm only taking the chance of advancing Indigenous people and giving them the skills first so that they're not left behind when the industry does start. So to date, over the last 24 months, my boys have logged over 3,000 dive hours. Now compare that to some of the UWA people when they come up to Shark Bay, they only stay there for 2 weeks. We're 3,000 hours underneath the water, so we make a lot of observations and we record a lot of data that we want to pass on to the scientists, the universities and government agencies that can use it to actually help better our environment. I'll give you another classic observation. We have a huge dugong population, but when the heat does come, they take off up to Ningaloo, all the males, all the bulls. They just take off and they breed with the ones up in Ningaloo and they'll stay up there, they won't come back, and that kind of stabilizes the population. The other thing is sea cucumbers, there's some sort of language between them and sea snakes. Wherever you see a sea cucumber, you see highly venomous sea snakes. Now we know that sea snakes are pretty much prey for tiger sharks. Whether they stay around sea cucumbers, because nothing likes to eat sea cucumbers, we don't know, but that's the stuff that we want to put into our living library where we can actually transfer data from an Indigenous point of view to a Western point of view.
Yeah, Jenny?
Michael, I was just going to say, because I was up there last week with your mob, they were saying about this sea snake, sea cucumber interaction. And so I came back and did a search on sea cucumbers and sea snakes.
Yeah.
And there is scientific data that says that has actually shown the same thing as you guys have observed in different parts of the world. And they said that the sea snake, this is their view, this is some of the scientific papers, that the sea snakes are so blind and amorous that they will, they'll go to any regs, and they think that the sea cucumbers are, physically resemble sea snakes enough to be interested. So I sent all the papers up to Sean.
Oh, okay. No, that's good to know. So what we want to do is try to create what we see here in Australia in Shark Bay, and then match it up to papers that are internationally.
Yeah. But
So,
don't worry about asking plenty of questions.
yeah, and the other thing is octopus as well. So where we see sea cucumber, we've actually seen an octopus take a sea cucumber into his burrow, and if you go out to Coburn Sound here, they've got octopus trapping out there. They do the same thing out here. It's like they bring him into their burrow, get the sea cucumber and clean everything out, and then kick him out. So there's multiple species interacting, and it's just a curiosity of the mind is why, and they're recording that because it may help future generations.
Well, you just need to write papers with Brett.
And want to.
In his spare time.
That's the other point that was really exciting working with Michael is that from a fisheries science background, if you've got 10 or 20 or 30 years of information, you think you're pretty clever. And the secret, I'm sorry if I offend anyone who's doing fisheries, it's all about relative abundance. Is there more or less than there were last time, and next year is there going to be a bit more, a bit less, or about the same? That's really fisheries 101. Talking with Michael, and if we can bring the Western science, as Jenny was saying, and the traditional knowledge and science that the Mulgana have of, say, I don't know, the last 400, 4,000 or 20,000 years, we can actually go back and, in a culturally and sensitive appropriate way, but we could actually recreate long-term histories of Shark Bay by bringing the Indigenous science and knowledge together with Western science. So it's quite powerful. And I'm quite envious that as a student, I didn't spend 300 days in the field or 3,000 hours underwater, so that's pretty good. The other thing that Michael alluded to was the Harry Perkins Institute. For the people who don't know, it's a research institute, medical institute attached to UWA out in the hospital precinct. There's a couple of things about sea cucumbers that, through observation, have got a lot of molecular biologists very excited. As Michael has said, and one of the guys has said, they can cast off basically their guts and a defence mechanism. And it's pretty sticky and it's pretty nasty stuff. And then they can regrow it. So people are interested in how is it that they can replace organs without dying. In places like Tonga, they actually cut them open, pull the cucumbers out, use the guts for fermenting, and throw the cucumber back to let them grow up again. So they're looking at now with high-end equipment and some AI, trying to separate molecules and seeing what they do. You alluded to collagen. I'm actually 107 and I've been using cucumbers all my life. But there's also, they have an anti-inflammatory property. And they think there's something there about the inflammation reaction of some cancers that can actually be treated. So they're looking at a whole lot of high-end stuff at that point. Now, Michael, being the person that he is, not only has he sent cucumbers down and let the people at Harry Perkins do what they do in a humane way, he's also encouraged his crew and his staff to go and see from harvest through the processing into the molecular lab, that whole chain of cycle of value. That's doing a couple of things. One, it exposes people who, as you saw on the TV, had never thought of a career in science that can do science. And sorry, not all of it goes to nice places and dies with nice animals. There's a lot of lab stuff as well. The other thing it does is opens up the possibility of scholarships or university careers, or at least the options. At least people know that there's options there. So that's a really powerful thing as well. And we've been trying to encourage, identify, cajole Mogana and others to take up some university careers as well. So there's a whole lot of things. He said looking at Chris Berg.
Is there any more questions before? Yeah?
With with global warming and so forth, you must feel very vulnerable in terms of that heat event that you had. I mean, how do you it must be scary to put all this effort into trying to regrow the grass, and you can have 1 or 2 years and it all goes again?
That's one aspect of the mentality that the globe is looking at. But if you really circle it down to Indigenous people, that comes into the concept of time. Like, there is no past, there is no future, there's only now, so you can control what you do now from a cultural point of view. So we understand there's risk, but the way we are as a people is it's only now. So if we do restoration and something happens in the future, then it happens.
Yeah.
But it's not doing nothing that is the bigger cause. And the way we approach it, I think Marley said it in one of the questions, was just do your best. That's what we do every day. That's our mentality, is you do your best. If you do your best on every single day, then tomorrow you don't have to worry about anything. So if the seagrass does die, we have the human capital, we have the capabilities to do it again. But we'll do it better than we did it before.
There's also, we're pretty blessed in WA by having a whole lot of marine science brains across universities and across various sectors, including CSIRO. There's at least 2 or 3 groups that are looking at more heat-tolerant seagrasses or corals. So they're also looking at those things. What are the key genes that make a more or less heat-tolerant seagrass? So they're trying to advance in other ways. There's also that if we think of climate change as very simply hotter water coming further south. Well, there's tropical species of seagrass. So what does that mean to the natural cycle, or can we get in front of a heat wave and have other species there? It sounds easy. It's a lot more complex than that.
What leads into that question as well is the fact that we are doing what we're doing and we have developed the concept. We've attracted a lot of high-end corporate entities, such as, I think you may have seen on the first screen, we've got a lot of work and assistance from the ANZ Bank. They've been helping us on a very pro bono basis. So there's an executive director there by the name of Jonathan. He's actually down here every weekend. You'll see him here working in this actual corner, but he does a lot of work with us because he understands the importance of the project and what we can achieve if we keep progressing. There's also a couple of European companies that have shown interest in the blue carbon and offsetting, and there's a local mining giant that is going to make an announcement with tidal moon in the near future on what we're doing from a community grants point of view. So we are progressing on the high end, and the reason why I say that is because as an individual you can worry about what the things happen in the future, but the corporations, they have the power to actually help assist things in the future. And now that they're recognising what people are doing from a local community point of view, like Tidal Moon and other companies around the country, it's putting eyes on a problem and putting a solution towards actually fixing it if it does happen again. So from this presentation, the one thing I can encourage you is just to support Tidal Moon by keeping an eye on what we're doing, and if you see it come up, just talk about it and share it with your friends and family.
Michael, it seems to me that there's over the last 10, 15 years an increased interest in Shark Bay in the area and tourism and visitors. Have you guys noticed an impact, and is it in any way possible to define a limit or parameters in terms of, I guess, events or access for people to know what you need to protect?
Actually, hands up to everyone that's visited Shark Bay. Ah, great. What do you think? Yeah. I wouldn't deny anyone that access, to tell you the truth. If they're going to go out there and actually makes them feel better as a person, then I encourage people to do that. The one thing I would suggest is interact with traditional knowledge, and we share. Our culture is all about sharing. We're happy to educate people, because if we know we educate people about the past, the environment, what is there, then you guys can take that knowledge and use it. It's your responsibility to make sure you interact with Shark Bay on a cultural level, and you know what you can actually do to protect the place, not only for you but for your next generation. So I wouldn't deny people from enjoying Shark Bay, but I would encourage people about learning more about the history of Shark Bay and how to protect it.
Just looking at the map there, is there any particular areas where the sea cucumbers are, or are they spread out across Shark Bay?
Well, I don't know if anyone can see it, but if you've been to Shark Bay, there's an outlet, is what I call like a pressure relief valve, which is South Passage. There's a lot of current that goes through there, and it goes into deep water, just like Ningaloo. So a lot of the species come up with a certain tide and certain moon into South Passage, and they'll sit there and feed on the filters. They're the more mature ones. The other ones will actually drift with the tide and go a bit more down into the inlet towards False Entrance, and then you got a bit more up towards the Wirral Bank, where there's a lot of sand, and then around Tory Island as well.
So they like the flow of the water?
They love the tide, and they love the moon. Tidal moon.
Why do they like the moon?
I don't know. They just come out. You could literally go over a whole patch, and if you're not there on the right moon phase, they'll just bury you. You come back on the correct moon phase, they'll be everywhere. It's the cultural aspect on how we fish. We use a lunar calendar, we don't use a normal calendar. It's the way the world used to be, is you use a lunar calendar. It's something that I'm trying to teach my boys, because they're like androids. They have a phone, and the time tells them everything, and the date and everything. I was like, wait a minute, what's the moon phase right now? Because if the power goes off, you need to know it. Any more questions? I feel like I'm not doing good now. There's no more questions. Well, that's all I really have. Oh, one more question over back, yeah?
Are there other seagrass or sea cucumber areas that could develop the same thing?
The way I look at that is, yes, I would say there would be, because there can't just be tidal moon and Shark Bay. What I would encourage is that if we develop a concept, it could be translated somewhere else. I think the main thing that you need to focus on is obviously the IP that we're developing, but the human capital. You need people to do it properly, and I think Shark Bay, with it being a nursery, being shallow water, being a high population of biodiversity and seagrass, I think can use it as a pilot to take it to other places around the country. I haven't, but there's a couple of ladies here who've been diving. Oh yeah, Gary Kendrick, yes. So Gary Kendrick, he's a part of the tidal, he's is actually like family, to tell you the truth, Dr. Carrie Kendrick. So he comes up to Shark Bay, but he does a lot down in Coburn Sound, and a couple of the ladies here, from UWA, they dive in Coburn Sound and do a lot of the seagrass restoration down there. Any more?
Can I just ask you about your plans for aquaculture? Like, I think Brett said you were going to do sea ranching, and are you planning on raising young ones or putting them out or finding young ones? What do you think?
Well, with most businesses, and especially going to an export market, you need scale. So we want to do a large aquaculture farm on scale to offset the wild market, if you want to call it that way. Do the ones bred on land, so you don't have to take the ones out of the water. And do certain species which are the high market, like the sandfish, the golden sandfish, and then do the species that the pharmaceuticals will identify from a molecule base to say this one can help with pain, this one can help with inflammation, this one can help with burns, or whatever it may be. But on a very large scale.
Michael, I was just going to suggest maybe you might want to share in a 12-month calendar how much you work on the seagrass restoration and how much you do in the wild harvest, just to give people a perspective of where your time will be spent.
Yeah, so from I think we're starting in July. It's June, yeah, July. We actually are moving into a different phase. So the people that we've trained, both the permanent employees and our casual pool, our business model will be 6 months of seagrass restoration and then 6 months of sea cucumber harvesting. So you're kind of combining the two where you're restoring something, but you're also using it as an industry as well. And then eventually we want to fade out the industry as much and then come onto the offshore, onshore stuff. But the onshore facility will also be like a push-pull model where, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but have you heard of a fishing company putting more fish back? Have you heard of a trawling company like prawn trawlers just ripping up all these prawns and they're going, I'm going to put more back than what we take out? That's the concept that we're trying to aim for, is if we take 2 tons of sea cucumber out, we want to breed 5 tons and put 5 tons back. So it's a unique model, but it's more sustainable. It's a way that we can improve our ecosystem, create jobs, and move more into the supply chain that we're developing in the export market. That's it. Well, if there's no more questions, I want to say thank you very much for having the time to come down and listen to me speak about Tidal Moon. Like I said, we're a small business. We've been around for 6 years, and we're still growing. We want to share the story a bit more. We want to encourage people to actually be more involved in Shark Bay and knowing a bit more about Shark Bay and the history. And other than that, we enjoy Fremantle Sailing Club. Happy Royal Ocean Day, by the way.
Don't set it off just yet.
Oh.
So, folks, please once again join me in thanking Michael and Brett for sharing their time and their story with us this evening. It's really exciting, and we look forward to hearing the next chapters as the investment progresses and the industry grows in the directions that you're looking for.
Hopefully you invite us back next year for World Ocean Day.
Well, might have to hold you to that. So just on behalf of the Fremantle Sailing Club, I've just got some thank you gifts for you guys. So a bottle of wine and one of our tea cups, our brand tea cups.
Oh, look at that.
Nice warming red. Nice try. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed.
I've got some cards there for my card.
Yep.
Don't go anywhere. Stay.
you go, James. Oh, yeah. Right. There you go.